protesters have taken to the streets in several cities, demanding that government lift stay-at-home orders and other restrictions. Coping with the stress of the disease or even the threat of it is the important part how one fights illness itself. The question though how to do that, especially with children. We can feel the love coming back, that they have special ways, they have their special wings, and they draw each other pictures. There's different ways of staying connected. I think about it as kind of the days after 9/11. There was this extraordinary coming together of people, not necessarily physically, but people on the street saying hello to each other and talking to the strangers. And I think some of that I was coming to work today is walking alone on the street, social distance from anyone around us. And yet people would say hello and chat and they're checking on each other. It's nice to feel that sense that, what we're all on this together. The virtual reality has a potential to make those experiences available to everyone, not just the things that exist in real life, but things that we cannot do in real life, like seeing molecular structures and chemical reaction and the different scales, or being able to visit historical reaction of things that do not even exist anymore. In those types of scenarios, I think virtual reality has a potential to help people learn in much more real ways, and to see things that understand things in a way we would never get from just watching the video or reading the book. It seems like we keep hearing these fascinating use cases for the world's gonna look like always virtual reality. What point is I know we've been talking about this for decades. What point is this mainstream? Oh, will it always be a little bit? It's almost sudden going to be mainstream at some point. It's a matter of time, quality, and cost. There is kind of this misconception over the last few years that virtual reality is a gaming technology, and that's actually a pretty new conception of new things that people have been thinking. There's clearly value in real-world experience and actually going to the things. That's why we have a field trips. That's why we send the kids places like museums and even to foreign countries when we can. The problem is that the majority of people will never be able to do the majority of those experiences. It's one thing to have a bunch of kids in DC that are able to go to the Smithsonian for their field trips. But what do you do about the kids who are growing up in Kentucky and kids who are growing up in Ohio, the people who are growing up in the countries around the world, whereas I cannot just go down the street and experience these amazing things. What kind of country do you want to live in? I would like to live in the Singapore. The reason why I get very excited about Singapore is because of there's a focus on lifelong learnings and about just lifelong learnings, but also the way that it manage the relationship between corporation education institutions and the government. So the Ministry of Manpower in Singapore is fundamentally sophisticated about understanding what roles should government play in the labor market. And Denmark, for example, part of the reason why women work is because the Danish education system allows children to be looked after at the very early age, so they can put their children under care into a nursery, and the child is there and happy, and so the mother can go off and work. Cooperation in Denmark and Finland also are very positive about paternity leave. So they encouraged men to take paternity leaves, and so it's sort of the combination of things. So those are the two areas. But of course, both of these, all of them are very small countries. It makes it a lot easier that Singapore is a tiny and it's a city state, and Denmark has got its tiny little country. So it's very hard, frankly, to use those are very good example because the countries are small. I'll be very excited about doing this thing. I think it's really clear in my mind. Japan has to do now. The company and the nation are changing more slowly than the society changes. Because at the level of the society, we have to constantly adapt it to our situation. So if our mother reaches to 100, then we cannot abandon her and say the policy is we only live to 80. We've got to acknowledge that the sea lives to 100 and we've got to adapt. What happens often with society is they adapt very quickly at the level of the family because we have to, whereas a government or a corporation can sort of ignore it. So a corporation can still continue to say we have a cut-off point that we don't want to 65 is our retirement age. They can do that, but a family cannot. A family cannot say that hanging you are supposed to be dead at 80, and now you are still alive. Japan's school years has started in April for about 100 years. Many aspects of Japanese society have been operating according to this calendar. A September school start will require adjustment to the calendar of society as a whole. Because of the coronavirus, schools in Japan were temporarily closed from March to May. This was difficult for teachers, students, and parents. In Japan, the school year starts in April, so it's an important month for students. In this new situation, an interesting idea came up, starting school in September instead of April. Many politicians, educators, and students thought it was a good time to change the school year. The many countries started their school year in September, including the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom and China. When Japanese students go to study in these countries, there is a half-year difference in the school calendar. This is a problem for Japanese students who want to study abroad, and also for overseas students who want to study in Japan. Japan could have many more globally minded people at home and abroad. With the recent school closures due to the coronavirus, the idea of the September school start suddenly gained a lot of attention. Of course, this idea has some disadvantages. A major problem is that in Japan, university graduates usually join the companies in April. If school started in September, there would be a gap between graduation and the start of the employment. Companies would have to adjust their calendars as well. In a country like Japan, where we see a decline in the birth rate, sometimes we receive a negative response to a longer life because they tend to envision that a society where the government is in a worsening financial situation and welfare. How would those countries are suffering from declining the birth rate survive it in this 100 years life? That's why we've got to encourage the over 60s to be productive. People who are over 60 need to work. Governments need to encourage that, and corporations need to support it. Because if all over 60s stop working and the birth rate going down, as it has in Japan, that's an obvious catastrophe. So the way out of that is two ways. Japan has got an easy way out of this to make sure that the women are working and that the people over 60 are working. And those are the two groups at the moment. Japan does not encourage it. And of course, the third is immigration, encouraging the immigration.